Namaskar Madhusudan. Welcome to this interview. Didi Ananda Harimaya and myself are interested to know your experience in Berlin sector in the 70s. This recording is for the future generation, to hear the inspiration from the senior Margis and old-timers who established Ananda Marga in those early days. I am personally glad to meet you. In 1980, when I was LFT of Stockholm, I found the office records listing thousands of initiations by Dada Mayatita, who was out of Stockholm in mid-70s. Impressive to read the successful work that were done before I arrived to the regional office in Älvsjö, Stockholm. First, I wanted to ask you, how, when and where did you meet Ananda Marga?
I'm from the United States and from Philadelphia. And I went to school at the University of Pennsylvania. And in my last year of the university, I was going through a lot of turmoil and very confused due to a lot of changes in the university, changes in my life, a lot of uncertainty. So one day my roommate comes home and says, "Oh, I can take you to someplace. There's a guru going to be there, and he can answer all your questions." And I was really so confused. Normally, I wouldn't do something like that. We had many arguments over these kind of the psychic kind of stuff, which I wasn't really very fond of. And I thought, well, what harm can it do? So I went with him. It was an Ananda Marga retreat. Of course, I didn't know what Ananda Marga was. I mean, I walked into this Ananda Marga retreat with no preparation whatsoever. And the first thing I saw was people doing kirtan. I thought, what is this? What kind of dance is this? What are they singing? What? And I was really like watching and thinking, what am I doing here? So I started talking with one of the Margis there. And one of the things that I was very interested in was I had a lot of interest in philosophy. I had done a lot of study of philosophy and came up with some of my own ideas about the mind and how mind works and all these things. So I started talking with this Margi about my philosophy. And he started telling me about how they have all these books that Baba wrote. He said, but you don't have to read the books. You know everything that's in there already. I thought, really? And then he started telling me a few bits and pieces of things that Baba wrote that corresponded to some of my ideas. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is not only people who understand what I'm talking about, it's a whole organization that's dedicated to that. I thought, wow, this is really amazing. And then the Acharya shows up. He was a family Acharya. His name was Raghoji. And he walks in. Now, these days, I was in sort of a hippie mode, long hair, blue jeans, and very much counterculture, as they called it back then. And here comes the family Acharya wearing a business suit and carrying a briefcase. And I thought, who is this guy? But he was very soft-spoken and was very interesting. And so by the end of the retreat, finally, after a lot of convincing, they convinced me to get initiation. I was really resisting. I'm saying, oh, I'm just going to watch. I'm just going to watch. But finally, they got me initiated, and I didn't really know what was going on. But I learned meditation. And then I went home, and then I started meditating. And I started to feel almost immediately my life started to change. Like, my life, I always had so much trouble. Like, you try to get things done and they're hard to get it done. It started to happen within a week or so of doing meditation. I would just think of something and it would happen. Or I'd be sitting somewhere and think about somebody and that person would just start to walk by. I thought, this is really strange. This is really a different change in my life. I really enjoy the company of the Margis, so I started going to Dharmacharya. Next thing I knew, I was at the summer retreat. first summer retreat in New York sector was held in Wichita, Kansas. And I met Jitishwarananda, and it was always so interesting because one clash after another, like Dada Jitishwarananda was very particular about decorum in the retreat. And here was a bunch of hippies, and he said, no shorts, no t-shirts, no shorts, and everybody had to dress properly for going for Dharma Chakra. And people got really clashed. I said, okay, let's give it a chance. So I'll try that. I got really inspired. And then at the end of the retreat, I was talking with Dada Jitishwarananda, and he said, why don't you go to India to see Baba? I said, well, India would be interesting, but I don't know about Baba. Is there something else I could do there? Because I don't know, I just graduated college, I don't know what to do. He said, maybe you can become a teacher. I said, okay, I can do that. Well, we have a teacher training. I said, okay, let's try that. So I made my preparation to go to India. And in December 6th, 1971, I was on a plane to India. And I was with a group of 15 people who were going to whole-timer training. Every one of them was going to whole-timer training except me. I was going for this so-called teacher training. So we went by train to Patna, the old steam engines. Took like, what, 2-3 days? I don't remember. It's really an arduous journey by train. Got to Patna, went to the central office. Central office was like this little one-story house with a few rooms in it. And that was the central office for Ananda Marga. And we got there in the evening, just as Baba was about to give darshan. Baba's evening darshan was there in the front of the office of this building. There was a small porch where they would put a chair. They would bring this chair out and put it on the porch, and the Margis would stand in the driveway in front and sing kirtan. So we got there, and people were singing kirtan, and the first person who I saw who was leading the kirtan was Dada Karunananda, who later, a couple of years later, became the first SS of Berlin sector. He played the mridanga, the drum, like I've never heard. Just awesome. He could raise the kirtan through the roof. Just amazing, just amazing. So they're doing kirtan in front of Baba, and Baba's sitting there enjoying. And then during the kirtan, it was Baba's habit that he would do namaskar. He would pick out people in the audience, like people who were just standing in front, and he would look them, like he would pick them out and like look right at them. And then he would do namaskar. And you would know that Baba looked at you. And this sort of scared me a little bit. I don't know what to do when Baba looks at me. Anyway, Baba didn't look at me yet. So kirtan was really nice. And then the other thing that happened, that just a few weeks before I arrived, Baba had just given the new dance of Tandava. We had never heard or seen Tandava, no introduction, no description. So we're standing there, and then these group of brothers come out. Everybody clears with the kirtan stops, and Baba says Tandava. So everybody clears out, and these brothers all come into the driveway standing in front of Baba, dressed in full dress Tandava. All came out in full dress Tandava. What is full dress Tandava? The clothing is not the problem. It is the symbols. In one hand, they're holding a skull or a knife, torch, or a snake. I'm having a little bit of a blank which goes which, but here they come out and they've got these torches and they light the torches, so these blazing torches that these brothers are holding. The dance is the conquering of the forces of death with the forces of life. The first darshans I remember, Baba explained to us the Tandava himself. And so he explained the symbolism, and he talked about the counting, ta, ta, din, ta. He even pointed to his heel and his toe, pulled his foot up and pointed to his foot and showed how you land on this foot and that foot and how the counting works and what the symbolism meant. I mean, Baba's explaining this to us himself. Unbelievable. In order to get PC, they said, well, you're going to have to take a test. We said, what's a test? Well, here are these lists of things you have to memorize. Jamaniyama, 16 points, 15 shilas, supreme command. What? What's the 16 points? Oh, Baba just gave that. That's what something Baba gave last week. Brand new, 16 points. Oh, really? We have to learn 16 points. And then there's all these sub points in 16 points. There's like 32 points. And then there's 15 shields. What's that? Oh, that's good conduct. And then Jamaniyama. Well, we knew what Jamaniyama was. Supreme command. We had to memorize all that. And I went through so much clash. I said, I can't do this. And then after a while, I calmed down. I said, okay, maybe I can learn this stuff. It just one obstacle after another. Finally, we all passed the test. We were able to memorize all these things. Got okay to go for personal contact. So the next day, which I believe was December the 15th, we got personal contact. And I will explain, it was brief, but it was sweet. So after waiting for so many people, and finally I get in the door, and Baba's sitting on his cot, like a bench, and Baba motions that I should come here, little boy. Sit here in front of Baba, sit on the floor. So I'm looking up at Baba. Baba says, little boy, who is your father? Well, first he says, what's your name? So I have to give my name. The little boy, who is your father? Why Baba is asking me about my father? What's that got to do with anything? And then, I found out that when you're talking to Baba, Baba doesn't only ask the question, he answers the question too. Somehow in my mind, it came out, Baba, you are my father. And then Baba said, yes, and you are my son. And then Baba took his hand and rubbed me down like this on my face, side of my face with his hand. And Baba said, and what do you want to do in this life? I said, Baba, I want to do service. I want to help people. Then Baba said, do you have the moral courage to do this? That was a very confusing question to me. I didn't understand what the relationship was between moral courage and doing service. I learned that many, many years later. But it was a very important thing that Baba said to me. But the most amazing thing happened the next night. This evening, in the darshan outside the office, evening darshan, because Baba gave darshan twice a day. And during the kirtan, Baba was doing namaskar, as I explained earlier. He would look at people and do namaskar. This day, he was focusing on all the Americans that had come with me, all the 15 people. Each one he would single out, namaskar. He wouldn't say anything because there's kirtan going on and you couldn't hear, but Baba would look at one person, straight at them, and then do namaskar like that. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen if Baba looks at me? I don't know what I'm going to feel. And it was like energy, like flow, just shooting all over the place. Baba just throwing off this vibration everywhere. And then I noticed something during the Tandava. I saw this lizard that was sitting on the wall. Like Baba was chair was up against the wall, and above Baba's head, right above Baba's head, was a lizard about so long, maybe 6, 8 inches long, and pointing up and down right above Baba's head. And I had some understanding in the past that the lizard was a symbol of the occult. And I started to get scared. I thought, what is this Baba? What is going on here? There's Tandava going on, this lizard there, and all this vibration and energy that Baba shed is sending out. And then suddenly in my mind, the thought came, Baba is Shiva, and he's come to destroy the world. And I was really at maximum fear then. I was really terrified. And at that moment, Baba looks at me and does namaskar. And for a second, I didn't believe it. And then all of a sudden, all that fear melted into bliss. I don't know how, I can't describe it. Only thing was in my mind, Baba gave the answer, yes, but don't worry, everything's going to be okay. Baba just revealed something of himself to me and took away, I had a lot of fear. I had a lot of fear of a lot of things in society, and fear of nuclear war, fear of all kinds of things. And Baba just said, he didn't deny it. He just said, don't worry about it. To the United States, went for LFT training, and then eventually went back to India for whole timer training. And I had training in Benares. Spent two months in the training center. And then after finishing training, I was sent to Kathmandu to finish the Acharya training part of what they call it A part, training. So I went with another American brother, and we got to the border, and we were arrested. They searched our bag, found Baba's book, said, we're going to put you in jail for tonight. We're going to interrogate you tomorrow. Next day, we got interrogated. We didn't tell them anything. They said, you must be really well trained. So we got put in jail. And the next day, in all the newspapers in India, they printed an article that 2 Ananda Margis were arrested on the border who were members of CIA and were trying to disturb the military along the border regions. The next day, as was the habit, they used to read the newspaper to Baba in the jail. So they read this article to Baba. And Baba said that there's an old Bengali proverb that when 2 cats are fighting with each other, and the 2 cats can't do anything to the one cat can't do anything to the other cat, it's just outmatched. That cat will just start clawing the floor and the walls and just claw anything because it can't do anything to the cat it's fighting with. Baba said, this is what the Indian government is doing to Ananda Marga. And Baba sent Dada Keshavananda to the jail in Motihari just to give me that message. Amazing, just amazing. I got out of jail, got my finished my training, and got my posting to Berlin sector and RS Stockholm region. And
remember right? I think it was into Pahirashin.
well, actually, yeah, that's another story. My first posting originally was Cairo, RS Cairo. And so I told the GS, I said, or Dada Pranavananda, who was office secretary, he was doing the posting. We're coordinating the posting with Baba. And I said, okay, I'm ready to go anywhere you send me. You know, that's the duty of a whole timer. You do what you're told. You give it, you get posting, the posting is so important. But you should know something. I said, Dada, you should know something. And that is that, first of all, I'm Jewish. And there's a war going on between Israel and Egypt. And you want me to go to Egypt. And my family is well known in Israel and probably also known in Egypt as a well-known family in Israel. And I don't know what would happen to me or how long I would even last even if I got into Egypt. But just for your information. somehow they sent a message to Baba, and Baba changed my posting. And I got posted in RS Stockholm, and the RS Stockholm got posted to Cairo Center. He became Yukteswarananda later. We got on the plane and we were both sent to Berlin sector. And he was posted in Germany. I was posted in Scandinavia. I think we were, how many, 5, 6 RSs at the time? We had one posted in England, one in Scandinavia, one in Germany, one in Italy. And Dada Karunananda was Essex. And that was our whole everything. Ananda Marga workers in New York sector, Berlin sector in the spring of 1974. And then they held a retreat in Norway, and I went to the retreat. And the first thing I did at the retreat, Dada Karunananda asked me to give a lecture. So I gave my favorite lecture. I gave a lecture on brahmacharya. And after my lecture, SS came to me and says, "You will not have any problem in this sector. You're already, everybody loves you just from that one lecture." I said, okay, very good. But the next 2 years was just a whirlwind. I don't know what Baba did, but somehow my samskara and the samskara of people in Scandinavia, particularly Sweden and Finland, Sweden and Norway, and even eventually Iceland, were so well matched. No, these people want to learn meditation. Let's give them right then and there. So the next time 50 people show up, half the people want to learn meditation. Right then and there, we give initiation. 25 people got initiated. And that went on and on and on. 25 people. So sometimes 100 people will come to the lecture. 50 people would want initiation. Amazing. One time I was in Finland, and their English is not so well known. So I have to use a translator for a lecture. So I thought, let's see how much people understand of this class. What's attracting people to learn meditation? So I said, for this class, for this lecture, for this public lecture, I'm not going to prepare. Whatever comes in my mind, I'm just going to say that. And the style of translation is, I say a sentence, the translator translates. It's just back and forth, back and forth. I didn't like to do long discussion and then expect the translator to translate. So I would talk in short phrases and the translator would translate. So in this time, I would say a phrase, I would just start, I would meditate, and then I would start. And then I would say whatever came to my mind. Then the translator would translate. While the translator is translating, I'm just meditating, and then something would come to my mind. Then I would say whatever the next thing was. At the end of the lecture, same thing. Half the people want initiation. And I gave them all initiation on the spot with the translator. So one person came who spoke English. I said, how did you like the talk? Oh, very nice, very inspiring. I liked it a lot. Then I said, how much did you understand? I didn't understand so much. Then I realized that it's not the intellect, it's not the logic or the psychology or whatever you're talking about that's bringing people to Ananda Marga. It's you're creating a relationship with the people, the prospective Margis. Because for somebody to come to learn meditation from you, they have to trust you. And you have maybe an hour to get that trust. And so somehow in that environment, you have to create some kind of relationship between the people in the audience. So this went on for 2 years. We had so much growth in Scandinavia. And it was really a big change for Scandinavia, because when I arrived there, the previous RS, the Filipino Dada, he was very nice Dada. But the way he promoted Ananda Marga was all sadhana kirtan. There was no structure, no organization, not much of anything. Just enjoy, have a nice time. And everybody had a nice time. Then I came. well, now we have to follow 16 points. We have to set up offices. We have to create tour programs. We need to start getting organized. And they said, whoa, what is all this? Some people liked it, some people didn't like it. And then the other thing I brought, I realized, because I understood very much, because when the first time I was talking about when I was in India in 1971, after PC, we got group contact also, where Baba checked our 16 points. Baba checked each and every one of us, going down each and every point to make sure we follow 16 points. And I realized how important 16 points was. And nobody ever talked, and when I got to Scandinavia, nobody ever talked about 16 points. So I said, let's talk about 16 points. So I started talking about 16 points all the time. Sectorial retreat, this took about a year. So it's the second sectorial retreat I took care of in Norway. We wanted to emphasize the importance of 16 points. So we had our best people who were the best Margis in 16 points. We trained them sort of like LFTs. It was like an LFT training we had for those people. And what they were doing was they had two functions. We had 16-point seminars that were done in small groups, and each one of those people led one of those groups. The other thing that they did was check people to make sure they were following 16 points. For example, we had somebody posted outside the Dharma Chakra Hall to see if you had taken a half bath. Was the top of your head wet? Did you really take half bath? And then they would send people back to finish their half bath if they hadn't done half bath before. Now, I had prepared the Margis in Scandinavia for this, but the German Margis weren't prepared. It was a little bit of clash, but we worked it out. But we really had some really great Margis in that time. And it just grew like wildfire. And then in Iceland, because Baba wanted us to go to Iceland, nobody had gone there. So I sent an LFT to Iceland. And then the LFT did like 2 weeks preparation. Then Dada Krunananda and I went together to Iceland for the first time. And we were having lectures of 100, 200 people. And then with huge initiations. I mean, just amazing. And then, it grew so fast. We had a Dharma Chakra after like 1 week, and then we had a retreat like right soon after that. I mean, the growth in Iceland just amazed everybody. Everybody just loved it, the people in Iceland. It really, Ananda Marga got established there like almost literally overnight. In a way that I've never seen, and Margie said they'd never seen anything like that either. It was just an incredible end to that day, that night where we had so much spiritual vibration. I'm thinking, there must be something relating to spirituality and these subtle cosmic rays that cause these celestial events. But Baba really participates. He really helps create the mood and get everybody inspired. Because I remember that before, Dada Krunananda told me this, he said before he went to Berlin sector, he asked Baba what to do. And Baba said, the work will start from the north. And it took him a while to get to the north, but it really was, it was really vibrating.
Berlin sector, went to Solar sector.
Yeah, so from there, I spent my last time in Scandinavia, I spent 4 months in Iceland. And that helped really, we opened up a shop there and really helped the Margis get established. We started sending people to LFT training center. Actually, we were the Icelandic Margis were the majority of the LFTs in the training center. Keeping the training center running, actually. People couldn't believe this little island and sending more LFTs in Germany. And the training center was in Germany. So after that, I got called to Kathmandu, and I spent 4 months in Kathmandu waiting for a posting order from Baba to go to Australia. The problem was, this was the end of the emergency, the last 4 months of the emergency. And the GS had gotten arrested in India, and myself and one LFT from London, we were like running the central office of Ananda Marga for the globe. We weren't really running it, but we were basically living in the house. There really wasn't much happening. And there was a lot happening outside, though, because there was a big clash in the organization. What happened was there were two groups in the organization at that time. There was the group run by the head of VSS for Delhi sector, and then there was the GS. The VSS people had a plan. They were saying, this is an emergency and VSS is in charge, and we're going to get Baba out of jail by force because nobody else is doing it. And the GS says, no, we have to follow legal means. We're going to use the lawyers. We're going to do whatever it takes to get Baba out of jail normally. And these two groups did not meet eye to eye. They were just really awful in different things. So while I was in Kathmandu, the head of DSS comes to me and tries to recruit me to help do fundraising for him. And I said, I'm sort of posted here. I need to stay in the central office because the GS needs me there. Then he's tried to convince me. He said, you know, we had a link with Baba. The link was when Baba was in jail, they used to send messages in and out of their jail. That was called the link. But in that last few months, the link got broken. So there was no message from Baba, which is why I never got my posting order for Australia. And I really started laughing. I said, Baba's a genius. He supports everybody. We have two groups in Ananda Marga warring with each other, and Baba's supporting both. In any case, a few days later, there was an election. Indira Gandhi lost the election. And a few days later, the next day, actually, the emergency was lifted. And so I went to Bangkok. I waited in Bangkok. I got my post for Australia. I went to Australia. Had a very nice time in Australia. But after two expired, I couldn't get a renewal. And so I got shipped off to, I took the next plane, fortunately with an LFT to help me out. Went to Port Moresby in Papua New Guinea. Beautiful place, but really primitive. Very primitive place. But the nice thing was we found a professor at the university in Port Moresby who gave us a place to stay and arranged for me to give lectures at the university. And we actually created some Margis there and ended up having a Dharma chakra. 2 months later, visa runs out, off to Solomon Islands, the next island in the chain. And at Port Moresby was primitive. Honiara was really primitive. Really, you can do service there, Prachar, very difficult. And I thought really I was at the bottom. I was at the very most primitive place you could be. But after 2 months, my visa expired and I got on a plane and I went to the next place, which was Ponape in Micronesia, American territory. That really was the definition of rural and primitive. And after that, through some very arduous matters, somehow I ended up in Guam, where I stayed for 3 years. And during that time, Baba was on tour, and I wanted to see Baba in Taiwan. And I got the address of the SS. I sent the SS a letter, said, please let me know when Baba's coming. I have to come and see Baba. I haven't seen Baba. This was 1979, 78. I hadn't seen Baba since 71. When I was in training, Baba was in jail already. So I'm waiting and waiting and waiting, and no message from the SS of Hong Kong sector. And I start getting really deep meditation. I keep thinking, Baba, if I can't come to you, you have to come to me. I mean, really, what else can I do? I have to see Baba. I can't move from this place. I have no money, nothing. I don't know what's going on. Next thing I know, I get a letter from one Dada in Taiwan He said, oh, Baba came. We had a very nice time. And by the way, for your information, Baba couldn't get visa for Australia. So because Baba couldn't get visa for Australia, on his trip to the United States, he instructed all the workers of Suva sector to go to Guam to meet him. And of course, the next statement was, Baba didn't get visa for the United States, so that plan was off. But in that one sentence, it was just like Baba had heard my prayer that I wanted Baba to come to see me. And Baba really tried to come and see me. Had Baba gotten visa for the US, Baba would have come to Guam. I don't know what would have happened. I don't know how we would have managed, but it would have been really blissful. So what happened was, fortunately, a few months later, I was able to go to India and see Baba. Something very important happened. I was able to go on field walk. And field walk is really interesting. You're not supposed to talk to Baba. Baba will talk to you. You can answer Baba's questions. You're not supposed to talk to Baba. And I'm thinking, Baba knows more about Guam than I do. And I've been living there for 2 years and Baba never been there. That was so amazing. So when I went back to Guam, I had to really put my effort into learning all these things so I became fluent in that. But it really shows that Baba wants us to know about the environment that we live in. So we got out of the car for field walk and Baba starts walking. And the air is really bad that night. And Baba's walking and then Baba stops, stands very straight, puts his hand up in the air with his finger up and says, and then starts to sniff. And Baba says, smog. Smoke plus fog equals smog. Then Baba started talking about air pollution, water pollution. Baba was, I can't remember, Baba talked so much, I can't remember hardly anything. He talked about how industry was polluting, the capitalism was polluting, all the rivers that were polluted and the seas that were polluted and the air was polluted. And the more Baba talked, the more angry Baba got. And Baba's getting really angry about how the earth is being destroyed through environmental pollution. And I had never heard Baba talk like this. And I had been involved even in the US and even in Guam. I had been involved in the environmental movement a little bit. And I was a little bit somewhat disappointed. I never heard Baba talk like this. And then Baba also, while I'm on field walk, is talking like almost like a rant about how bad all things were. And this went on for a few minutes. And it got to the point as we're walking, I couldn't take it anymore. My head was bursting with Baba's anger. And Baba paused just for a second. I said, Baba, how can we stop the pollution? And Baba stopped walking. He looked at me and he said, the entire socioeconomic structure has to be changed. I had no idea what Baba was talking about. So we got back to Baba's house, and I started asking the Dadas, what does it mean the entire socioeconomic structure has to be changed? Oh, that's Baba's term for proud. And I understood at that time that all these things that I was so concerned about, you can fight against pollution, you can even clean up a few things here and there. But until the entire socioeconomic structure is changed, the entire psychology of people in the community is changed, you can't really stop these, permanently stop this pollution and clean up the environment. And it really showed me that we have to promote our ideology first before we promote our policies, because policies can change, but ideology is really what's going to change people's minds, and that's what's really going to change society. And I learned that really Baba just knew exactly what to say, pinpointed right on my head. And so that's when I got to meet Dada Ananda, who was the global organizing secretary for Proud. I said, Dada, please get me into Proud. So the next year I got transferred and I got brought into Manila sector. And I spent 6 years in Manila sector, traveling around in Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines. Actually, I was in the first group when I went to India in 1981 for Dharma Shamisha. Baba had just given the concept of Samaj. And so I was in the central office. Dada Tadbonanda comes up to me and gives me a map of the world. He says, Baba wants a map of all the Samajas of the world. Start drawing. I said, Dada, that's a big job. We need some help. So we worked on it. You know, Baba's not going to take no for an answer. So we did the best we could. We figured out where the border should be and just used marking pen and marked up the map to give to Baba. So when I went back to the Philippines, we actually started the very first Samaj in the Philippines. We realized because in the Philippines, there's 13 different dialects. But in the Philippines, they don't recognize those as languages. And based on Baba's criteria for Samaj, all those 13 dialects are actual languages. And each one of those 13 regions of the Philippines qualifies as an individual Samaj. And that was a big eye-opener for the Margis in the Philippines, because they didn't understand even a lot of their own history and a lot of the colonial influences that were left over from the Spanish period. Well, here's something interesting. Okay. This is sort of very strange, but in 1986, when I went to India to get Baba's permission, the GS made me sit in his office for a week, all day long. I would go in the morning and I would sit in his office all day, and then in the evening I'd go back to the Jagrati. Well, the GS's office in Lake Gardens, this is Baba's house, not in Tiljul. In Baba's house, GS has an office. And there's a door that's never open, but there's a door that goes from the GS's office into the stairwell that Baba walks up and down every day. And so I wasn't allowed to see Baba at that time. But every time Baba would come and go from the Lake Gardens, he would stop right outside that door and talk to some people. And I was like Baba was on this side of the door and I was on this side of the door. And I could listen to what they were saying. And I couldn't see Baba, but Baba let me be like very close to him at that time. That was nice.
Thank you very much. Very wonderful. Thank you very much for this. Very nice to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.